Hello. Today I want to talk about bullying, but we're going to arrive at bullying, what it is, and the potential solutions to your grandchild being bullied in a circuitous route. And we're going to start off in probably a strange place, the Bible, because I want to look at the origins of all people, you, me, your children, your children's children, who are, of course, your grandchildren, and every single other solitary person alive today. And the concept we're going to look at is original sin, but probably not in a way that you've heard it before. Because as your Bible will tell you, we were all born in the image and likeness of God. And if you want to couple that with another thought, there is nothing that is not God. God is everything there is, everything there ever was, everything there ever will be. So if everything is God, what are you? There's no other choice. You must be God. And your Bible tells you were born in the image and likeness of God. No, it wasn't me. That was that Adam fella. Yeah, but he's your antecedent. And so what he was, you are, just a few generations beyond. And if you think this is all biblical and airy-fairy, look back to your own origin. You were conceived in love. And when you were a small child, I'm arbitrarily picking a 1-week-old baby. What sin had you committed? Look through the Bible, or you don't need to look through the Bible. You can imagine them. What biblical sins had we committed? Did you have false gods? Did you commit adultery? Did you murder? No. So none of the 10 commandments had been broken by you when you were 1 week old. What about the 7 deadly sins? Were you lazy? Were you envious? Were you wrathful? Not really. So there was nothing that you had done wrong. What about socially? What about social ills? Were you a bigot or a racist or a liar or a misogynist or anything else of the politically correct situation that you could have violated? No, none of those. So apart from some theological process saying that you were born a sinner, clearly at 1 week old, you were perfect and had committed no sins. And that leads us on to what is sin in the first place? Well, sin, the original Hebrew word that's translated as sin and we use today, simply means missing the mark. Well, what mark did you miss? Well, I want to move forward a little bit as to what happened to you, me, and everybody else in existence today. We progressed. We were a month old, and then we were 6 months old, and we were a year old, and finally we reached the age of reason when we started to talk. I don't know, somewhere between 1 and 2. I don't know. You tell me. It varies from person to person anyway. And once you were able to reason, people started telling you things which were quite disconcerting to you as a small child. Things like, this is how good boys behave. If you don't obey the model I'm giving you of the good boy, then you're not a good boy. In fact, you're a bad boy. And many of us were actually told blatantly, you are a bad boy. You have misbehaved. You were told that you didn't deserve things, and that sometimes you were told that the acts that you had carried out were worthy of punishment. And particularly of our generation, it was popular practice to knock the willfulness out of children. We considered children as fundamentally evil little brats that had to be controlled and made to conform. Otherwise, they would be feral, never fit in, and they would be a danger to society and an embarrassment to their parents. So if you remember, the other thing is God gave us free will, and yet our parents, and probably we to our children, decided that they weren't allowed to exercise their free will. In fact, I remember distinctly from my upbringing, I reached the age where I was told that I shouldn't want the things that I wanted. I should want the things that parents wanted or teachers wanted. And I was told that I should want things that I didn't want. I should want things that parents and teachers wanted. I was told that I shouldn't behave the way I wanted to behave. I was told I should behave the way that others wanted me to behave, the way that made others feel comfortable. So it wasn't about whether I felt comfortable with the behavior, it was about whether my behavior made other people comfortable, particularly mother. Making the biggest sin for most children is making mother unhappy. Now, I was a particularly egregious example because of my upbringing of having to learn from no age whatsoever that I was responsible for my mother's emotions. I, at a very small child, about this big, could apparently manipulate the neurochemistry, the peptides and the other molecules of emotion floating around my mother's bloodstream and somehow affect them. She did not take responsibility as an adult for her emotions and teach me emotional self-regulation. She made me, as a 2-year-old, responsible for her vastly superior emotional experience and worldly experience. And before you think that sounds terrible, I think you'll find to a certain extent that's everybody's experience. So what I'm describing, of course, is not unconditional love. And unconditional love is the description of God. We were given conditional love. We were told you can only be loved if. And if you didn't fulfill the condition of if, then love was demonstrably withdrawn. It could have been a lack of smiles. It could have been a lack of cuddles. It could have been ostracism. You go to your room until you learn to behave. Or it could have been outright punishment. You could actually have been physically attacked or restrained. This is the very opposite of unconditional love. And you can see that instead of our parents training us to step into our divinity, they actually told us not only were we not God, they actually told us that we were naughty little broken children that needed to be punished and castigated and put in our place. And that is really what original sin is. Original sin was we were in the garden of our innocence, beauty, and unconditional love, and we were unceremoniously pushed out of the garden into this world where suddenly love was in very short supply and you had to earn it. You were no longer given it just because you existed. And I can hear you say, oh, this is all very well, but what's it got to do with bullying? And the answer is very simple. There really are only two ways of being for all humans. One is love, and the other one is fear, where fear is the absence of love. And you cannot be in love and fear at the same time. It's quite black and white. You are either in love, and think of the ingredients of love. Love includes things like courage, kindness, patience, forgiveness, mercy, or you're in fear. And fear includes isolation, separation, fear of the other, retribution, blame, shame, guilt. And those two are completely incompatible. So we were taken as very small children out of the love state where we feared nothing, very, very quickly in a few years into the fear state where we feared almost everything. We walked on eggshells around adults who were meant to protect us. Where we had to mind their emotions and basically in our little minds had to adopt a particular way of being that was totally alien to who we were born as in order to survive. Because as a human child, you cannot survive. Imagine that you were taken out and dumped into the woods, which has happened to millions and millions of humans over the millions of years of our evolution and just left there. Every other animal can get up and walk around and fend for itself after a couple of hours. Look on YouTube, get a video of a giraffe being born. Gangly legs, but within 2 hours it's walking around like a professional. A cat, when it's born, knows it's a cat. A dog knows it's a dog. A dolphin knows it's a dolphin. Humans know nothing. We absorb almost everything. Almost every single thing you think you know about yourself was given to you by others. When you were a 1-month-old baby, I'm not talking about what your parents thought about you as a 1-month-old baby. I'm talking about what you thought about yourself as a 1-month-old baby. What gender did you have? Well, you didn't. You had no concept of gender. What was your religion? Well, you didn't have one. You had no concept of religion. What was your race? What was your father's occupation? What was any of the demographics that we may offer to others now as our identity? Um, None of them existed in you when you were a 1 week old or 1 month old baby. They were all given to you later. When you reached the age of reason, people told you what colour you were, what gender you were, what race or religion you were, and how to behave. None of those things that you were born with. So you took on an identity, some of which was benign. Maybe you were born in a particular country. Maybe you were born to a particular race. Maybe your father did have a particular maybe your town did have traditional enemies. All of this may have been true, but it's not really part of your identity. Your identity was the child of God, an image of the universe. And as such, you were born with a unique set of skills and talents and passions that would drive you towards the purpose you were put on earth for. God's mission for you, if you like. And the very chances are that a few years later, that was taken from you too. You were probably told that you were a dreamer and that the way to happiness in this world was to earn money. And the way to money was the traditional path: become a doctor, become an engineer, become a teacher, become something respectable, something that earned money, something that would make mummy and daddy proud. They didn't want to go around saying, my child is a struggling artist. They wanted to go around saying, oh yes, he's somebody in the city, he earns a lot of money as a stockbroker, because that would make them feel good. And it would also make them feel safe, because if you had a lot of money, you could look after yourself, and later on, when they were in their dotage, you could look after them. It's the way of the world and always has been. Now, don't take any of this as criticism. What was your parents' qualifications as parents? None. But what were their parents' qualifications? None. What were your qualifications to have your children? None. What are your children's qualifications to have your grandchildren? None. None of us know a blind thing about this parenting business. We're not cats or dogs where it's instinctive. We learn it, and we learn a load of shit. And that's basically what this original sin nonsense is. The sins of the fathers are passed on to the son, and so it goes on. And the sin is simply taking the divinity away from our babies. And if you look into the Bible, and if you look at Jesus' life, and they say that he lived the perfect life, and many people think, well, what was perfect about his life? I'll accept that his life was perfect. What was perfect about it? If you remember the story of Jesus' birth, Mary was told that she was having the Son of God before he was born. Now imagine the way Mary brought up infant Jesus. Do you think she told him he was a bad boy? Not really likely, is it? By the way, creator of the universe, father of everything, you're a bad boy, clean up your room or you'll be punished. Not really likely to have happened in Mary's house, is it? No. The main difference between Jesus' upbringing and our upbringing is they knew who he was. They knew he was the Son of God before he was born. He wouldn't have suffered any of the things that they would have thought, well, he is going to go up perfect and strong and do exactly what God put him on this earth to do. But why is that different from anybody else? Aren't we all supposed to step into our Christ consciousness, become Christ? If you're a Christian, aren't people telling you to think, what would Christ do, and do that? So if you are an expression of God on earth, if you are the Word made flesh, you aren't a broken machine that has to be disciplined or controlled. You are an image of the universe with free will. And the only way that that could be knocked out of you is an act of bullying. Your parents bullied you, you bullied your children, and your parents and your children are bullying your grandchildren. Unwittingly, out of love, out of wanting what's best for them, from their level of consciousness. They are sacrificing their lives for their children. They are doing the best they can. They are doing the best to love them, just as you did for your children. You didn't know you were making a mistake, so you can't be blamed for it. But you can do something about it now. But first of all, I want to talk about what has this got to do with bullying. And the problem was that we've said that people are either in love or in fear. And the moment we bullied our children to conform to our standards of behavior in the world, and you can already see conforming to the world is the way of sin, it's the way of death. Fear is often called the little death. And when the Bible talks about the dead, sometimes they do literally mean people in a pine box 2 meters below the earth, but often they mean simply those who have been removed from God's grace and now living in fear or death, the dead. But we, of course, are responsible for our own emotions and behaviors. It is us who remove ourselves from God. God never goes away. We are God. Everything is God. We never need to find God again. We just need to stop forgetting that we are God. We can't actually do any sin other than pretend that we're not God, because that's all we're ever doing is pretending that we're not God. So, as I say, as children, we were living in fear. And when you're living in fear, and you feel ashamed of yourself, or you feel in doubt of yourself, or you feel guilt, the greatest imperative in all human beings, including you and me right now, is to stop feeling the excruciating pain of that shame, guilt, and fear. And we will attempt to change reality to stop feeling it. And now, this might alarm you. There is very little difference between the bully and the victim. All they have is different environments that they grew up in and different ways of coping with their own guilt, shame, and fear. There are far more bullying victims than there are bullies. And I would count myself, I was both a physical bullying victim when I was younger and at school. I didn't put my growth spurt on until I was over 16. I was always the smallest one, and with the traumas that happened in my family, I was little mentally and physically, and I was the perfect bullying victim. I then went on to be bullied in relationships, bullied in work, and I really only discovered myself within the last 10 years. So my qualifications to talk about this is a lifetime of bullying, and also the realizations I made and the changes I made in my life as a result of those realizations, which now have converted me from being a bullying victim into a so-called normal person. And I haven't gone from being the victim to being the perpetrator. But if you think about the standard bullying advice, when we find a child that comes home, a little scared child comes home and says, the big boy picked on me, somebody somewhere is going to say, well, you need to fight back. You need to toughen up. You need to go in there and show them who's who. It ain't going to work, because it comes down to identity. And if that child has got the identity of victim, then they're going out and nothing can change it. Unless you can change that identity of victim, they will present victimhood to the world. And there is nothing a bully wants more than a victim. A bully isn't looking for a challenge. The bully doesn't go out into the playground and pick on the headmaster or a teacher or a prefect or the head of the football team. They're looking for the scared little creature that they can intimidate. And we're inclined to look at that bully and go, you are a monster. But we don't realize that that is because they are a scared little person as well. And all that's happening is the bullying victim is embracing their identity of a victim and presenting that to the world. The bully is rejecting their identity of the victimhood and saying, I hate victimhood. And they project the victimhood out into the world, and they find what they think is the source of their hatred, victims, and they show victims exactly what they think of them. That bullying your grandchild is crying out from their own space of victimhood. Now, am I saying we should all go and love a bully? Well, in a way, yes, but that's not what I mean. Because that bully, you need to understand him. They are looking specifically from people who are displaying victimhood so they can vent their frustration at their own victimhood on that external target. That bullying your grandchild, is basically an act of self-hatred by the bully. But they are looking for people who are displaying victimhood. So if your grandchild is displaying victimhood, this is something they can only have learned from their environment, which is the home environment. I know you hate to hear that. You're probably shaking your fist in anger at this screen now and rejecting it violently. But where else would they learn to be a victim? And one of the reasons that victimhood is reinforced in their home is that victims come from empathetic homes. Yes, you were empathetic. Yes, your children are empathetic if your child or if your grandchild is a bullying victim. Because they live from a place of victimhood and they find out victimhood gets them significance and love. It gets their needs met. When your little lost grandchild or your children when they were younger were ill or sore or frightened, whatever they were being made to do, whether it was tidying their room or go to school, suddenly went away, and people wrapped their arms around them and gave them love and told them everything would be okay. And they learned that the weaker they behaved, the more love they got. And so they wholeheartedly embraced being a weak victim, because it satisfied their needs for love and connection. And the difference between your little lost child and the apparent big confident bully, who is simply a little lost child with a much bigger body, is that there's no empathy in their home. When they display weakness in their home, watch any movie, you can see the classic child from a home that becomes a bully when they go to school. They are bullied mercilessly, and any display of weakness just gets anger and insult and derision. They feel little and lost and powerless in their own home. They are told often with swear words and violence that their weakness and victimhood is despicable. And so that is what their model of the world is. So they go out into the world knowing that being a victim is a terrible thing that should be punished. And they find victims and punish them. Is it that hard to understand what they're doing? Now, as I say, the difference between your child and the bully is simply their home environment. And the modern world says what we should do is we should go and find the bully, and we should tell them to stop, and we should tell their parents to make them stop, and we should tell them exactly what we think of them and make them stop. In other words, give them more of what made them into a bully in the first place. You tell a bully, and first of all, he'll deny it or get angry. And if you go and tell his parents will be pissed off that their day has been upset. And guess who they'll take it out on? The very child who now becomes even more of a bully because you complained about them. So the step of tackling the bully or toughening up against the bully cannot work and never will work and has no history of working. All you can do for your child is to stop them behaving like a bully, like a victim, and then they won't be bullied. That's all the change I've made in my life. I'm no longer a victim. In fact, victimizers now reject me. I used to attract victimizers, and now they reject me. And that is a powerful statement. And surely you don't want your child to be a victim anyway, even if they're lucky enough to feel little and lost and timid and scared, and there are no bullies in their environment. Do you still want them to feel little, lost, timid and scared? I'm sure you don't. So tackling the little, lost, timid, scared, guilt, shame feelings in your grandchild is the solution to everything. It's the solution to bullying at school, but it's also the solution to bullying in marriage and in the workplace and in life in general. You will find that if your grandchild is a bullying victim now, like me, they will be bullied by life and they will be unhappy. And in another video, I'll tell you the result of a lifetime of bullying on me and it ain't pretty and it ain't desirable. If you get the opportunity now with your grandchild, and you're in a better position than their parents are, because you get to see your grandchild infrequently, and you have a natural authority. You're not the one in their life who's constant telling them, do your homework, brush your hair, brush your teeth, tidy your room, come to the table, go here, go there, go somewhere else. You have a much better relationship with your grandchild. I had that relationship with my children because we separated. I only saw them at the weekends. So I wasn't the one that had to tell them to do all these things. They just came to see me, and I got quality time with them. You're in that position now with your grandchildren, is that my grandchildren aren't old enough yet. They're only babies. But you have the opportunity with your grandchildren now to have quality time with them, where you are not in the do this, do that, do something else mode. And you have a God-given opportunity to help your grandchildren step into their own power, into their own path in the world, exercise their own will, and take their rightful place in the world as God intended. And there's a lovely little film I saw just last night that demonstrates the path quite nicely. And there's no religion in it whatsoever. It's a film starring Donald Sutherland called, I've written it down, Sam. I'm going to have to find it because I've said this and I've already forgotten the name. Oh, it's called Milton's Secret. And it's based on some quite advanced spirituality stuff. It's just done in the form of a Hollywood movie, and it's really good. I think you'll find it inspiring. So I think we've already run over today's missive. I think that's enough for today. And there's a few things for you to think about. So see you next time. Bye-bye.